Hello and welcome. This is Wilrens for Create a Learning Site, the place to go deeper in your understanding of the Bible. One subject that is foundational if we want to understand the Old Testament better is Hebrew poetry. It's a subject habitually covered in YWAM Bible courses, usually in connection with an introduction to the book of Psalms. However, much more of the Old Testament is poetry than merely the Psalms or even the poetry and wisdom section in our Bibles. That's Job through Song of Songs. There are few Old Testament books without any poetry. Off the top of my head, I'd say Leviticus, Ruth, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. And so in this issue, I'm taking a brief but fresh look at some of the characteristics of Hebrew poetry. Brief because it will be a short issue. I'm getting ready to publish my teaching on the book of Revelation on YouTube and through the website wilrens.org. I hope to have the first installment, the units giving a general introduction to the book of Revelation, ready for next month. Units covering the text will follow. That's a big job, so consider this the lull before the storm. I'll keep it short. It's a fresh look because I ran into an intriguing feature of Hebrew poetry that I did not know about before. And so first, the feature that's well established and well known. It has long been observed that Hebrew poetry tends to repeat in a second line what was stated in the line before. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth. The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib. But Israel does not know, my people do not understand. It would be more accurate to state that elements in the second line in some ways correspond to elements in the first line. Often there is no straightforward repetition or restatement in different words, although there can be, as in this example here. And in that case, we're talking about synonymous parallelism. It is also possible for the corresponding elements to contrast with each other. This is called antithetic parallelism. As in this example here, a wise man's heart inclines him to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. This form, antithetic parallelism, is used extensively in the book of Proverbs, especially in chapter 10 through 15. There are many lines in Hebrew poetry, however, where there do not seem to be corresponding parts. These lines were originally brought together under the category of synthetic parallelism. The idea is that the second line in some way adds to the first line, taking it a step further, often by giving a reason or purpose. I am sweating because I ran fast. There are other, less common forms of parallelism, but these three are the basic types. Synthetic parallelism as a category has come under a lot of criticism because is this really parallelism? How is this different from a normal sentence, as in, I am sweating because I ran fast? By what criteria can we even decide that a passage without clear parallelism is nevertheless poetry? The presence of metaphors? Hebrew poetry is indeed rich in metaphors, similes, and other imagery, and I suppose this is a universal characteristic of poetry. However, since such figures of speech can also be used in prose, it's not a surefire way to identify poetry. Parallelism is. But there are at least two more criteria. The first is context. If a sentence appears in a passage rich in synonymous parallelism, there is a good chance it is also poetic, even if it lacks corresponding or parallel elements. The second is terseness. Since about 1.5 years, I've been working on improving my Hebrew. The main thing I'm doing is to read slowly through the Hebrew text of the Old Testament. And so far, I've made it from Genesis to the beginning of Judges. It is a slow process. For the time being, I'm limiting myself to books with historical narrative, and not just because these are the books at the beginning of the Bible. It's also because I've dabbled in Hebrew poetry and found it extraordinarily hard to read, much harder than historical narrative. How come? Of course, one reason is that narrative has a storyline, usually a familiar one, and poetry often does not. Second, Hebrew verbs, prepositions, and other particles are less complex and not as narrowly defined, leading to greater ambiguity. The text often leaves the reader to determine the exact relationship between terms and phrases that is intended. This is also true for prose, of course, but there context and storyline provide more help. And then the third reason, and it turns out to be no less characteristic of Hebrew poetry than parallelism, is terseness. The poet, so it seems, is committed to using as few words as he can. For instance, there's a particle in Hebrew that identifies the direct object of the verb, as in he strikes him. The particle is frequent in prose, but rare in poetry. Other particles, relative pronouns, conjunctions, are also less frequent in poetry. The because in square brackets in the example above will probably not be included in Hebrew poetry. The sentence would be, I am sweating, I ran fast. The shortness is all the more striking because Hebrew works a lot with prefixes and suffixes. Articles and pronouns are habitually ended to a noun or a verb at the beginning or the end, resulting in a single word where English may have 2 or 3. The increased use of imagery reduces the word count as well. The Lord is my shepherd is stating a lot in a single metaphor. And in Hebrew there are only 2 words, no verb, and the pronoun my is suffixed to the second noun, shepherd mine. The first line of what may be the world's best known and best liked poem or song is only 2 words long. Yahweh, shepherd mine. Terse indeed. In addition, parallelism often uses ellipsis or omission. The second line omits one or more corresponding elements, often the verb, leaving the sentence incomplete. See the 3 dots in brackets in the example here. This second example also leaves out the verb. In most cases, therefore, it is clear which passages are poetic. Unfortunately, modern translations increasingly print them as such, making it easy to recognize poetry and to read accordingly. Because there is no way around it if we want to get it. Poetry is terse, it is hard, therefore we have to read it more slowly than prose. Slow down.
The show will be starting in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience. The show will be starting in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience.